took a lot of heat on this on my LSU channel because I have been very complimentary about Florida State. Look, last year they finished as a top 10 team in my power ratings, and one thing I really liked about them is they dominated a lot of teams last year. I mean, they blew out some teams that had pulses that were decent. You blew out Syracuse in their building. Of course, Syracuse isn't a great team, but you went in there and got business done against a team that was decent. And you blew out, obviously blew out Miami. Miami's not a good football team by any stretch of the imagination, but that's a rival. It's a game that people get up for, and that really impressed me that Florida State was able to enforce their will in those games. I just think, for me, yes, it is true Florida State did get better. The biggest issue, though, for LSU is they were playing a lot of players that are not Power 5 starters. And in particular, a lot of the guys that did play in that week 1 game, I know it's an excuse, all right? And I'm tired of giving it, but it's just the truth. One guy at linebacker immediately became the 4th-string linebacker by week 3. The right tackle who started in the game last year is now at Tulane. The right guard didn't get a start for the rest of the season, and the center was stripped of his center duties the very next week. So I give Florida State a lot of credit in that first game, having their better players out there. Some of that was the week 0 stuff. And, when you look back and LSU's comeback in that game, it took some fluky things to happen for LSU to make that, a 1-point game in the grand scheme of things. But, I know this is just the thing that a lot of Florida State fans have been hearing. But it's true. LSU just became a way better football team once Brian Kelly got the ball kind of moving, and he finally found the lineups that worked best for what he had to work with. Now, one thing that is a little concerning from an LSU standpoint is they were far better offensively at home than away from it. And that's going to be very key for the LSU offense. And there are some good things, right? They were in this building last. This was the last game that they played, obviously, in Camping World Stadium. I do think that matters. And one little thing, Mark, and obviously Jordan Travis has a great work ethic. All my sources tell me he is a all-out great leader, all those things. Jaden Daniels is as well. This is a guy who had the keypad changed at the LSU facility for him to be able to go watch film past 11 p.m. This was a guy who yesterday admitted publicly that many a times he went back and rewatched the Florida State film again and again and again. And he was like, okay, this is something that I would have done differently. This is something that I would have done here or there. Jaden's physique has gotten thicker. He looks more like a quarterback instead of, the young kid who started as a true freshman from Arizona State. And this is a guy who has said in every interview, Mark, that he is going to be more vertical. Now, obviously, Jordan Travis did not have as many poor performances as Jaden Daniels did last year. He had 2 games where he just wasn't great. But I do think Jaden's game does give himself some immense upside. And if we see that upside, I think it's going to be a shootout. So let me ask all 3 of you guys. Do you believe this game is a game where it's 35-28, 35-31, that kind of game?
Yeah, so my prediction is 38-31.
Wow.
That was I've stuck with that. No, Florida State. 38-31 Florida State. I've stuck with that prediction for a long time. Some things have changed. I've thought about maybe stretching it when Mason Smith went out, but I'm going to stick with that original prediction. But just before we go past it, you and James both had great points about the talent and FSU getting better and LSU having that, your take for them having a dramatic, improvement that you guys see. I think that from a Florida State person's context, 20-21, 21-22, Florida State lost a lot. Like guys like Jermaine Johnson who could go in the first round, or even guys that were borderline would go. That's kind of the big difference this year. Like heading into last year, there were a ton of question marks heading into that LSU game. Maybe not as many as y'all had, But just the fact that we were able to bring so many people, and that's why we harp on that 87% stat so much, is just because isn't something that's happened in close to a decade almost, that people are like coming back to make this run. And then when we were able to hit the portal, we were able to do it just to get better, kind of. One of this guy, one of these guys, two of these guys, more than just having to plug a hole. But yeah, 38-31 is where I'm at, and I'm ready for it, man. Let's kick this thing off.
I think it will be a shootout because you do have a lot of people that are better. And I think, just to piggyback on what George said, Jordan Travis entering last year with everybody picked on him as he can't throw the ball. And that's what people say. He was a running back that throws, to a guy who, I believe, if he wins one of those 3 games, which was in the sights, he's probably going to New York. Trey Benson, we have to remember, I don't think Trey Benson had over 50 total yards of rushing. He was injured, often injured. He was a very big question mark. Johnny Wilson had under 200 yards, 200 career receiving yards. A lot of hodgepodge of offensive linemen coming in. We thought Jared Verse could be good, but nobody knew what Jared Verse could do on the Power 5 level. He went from FCS to Power 5, so a bigger jump than what we're going to see with Brandon Fisk. Fabian Lovett was good, but we didn't know how good. He still hadn't become that dominant guy. And we had just lost Jermaine Johnson, who we all knew as that guy. And also coming off the heels of people still reeling off of the Travis Hunter. So a lot of the question marks that we had were proven right, regardless of what the scenarios are and what the situations were in that game. They had their coming out party in that game. I believe what Verse had, I know Verse had over at least 2 sacks in that game, regardless of who it was against, but he did have that, and the nation got a chance to know exactly who he was. But I do agree that I think it's going to be one of those games that's going to have ebbs and flows. There'll be somebody will jump on top, and not necessarily by like 21 or anything, but somebody will get a two score lead, more of like a 10-point, like up by 10, and then we'll see the game kind of get separated by in the fourth quarter. And I think, I obviously I believe Florida State will win, but I do think, and I heard this in a high school football game that I went to go check out. This game does not define either team when they lose. It should be a good, unless it's a blowout on either side. Then maybe it does define the other team.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to be a good game, and I do expect to see LSU making a run. And, obviously the only team I think that stands in their way for the West again is obviously Alabama. It'll be that way until Saban decides that he's done. But I do believe LSU will be a team that could possibly compete to go play in the SEC championship again. And I think Florida State will be a team that, when it's all said and done, will be competing for an ACC championship. And that's what's fun. And I think you brought it up, Carter, in the beginning, with the new way that the landscape is moving, as well as, obviously the playoff, but also the SEC going to a 9-team schedule in conference. You're no longer going to see games like this because they're dangerous. You don't want to have – there's no need to take that risk for the extra L out of conference when you still feel you have a tough conference schedule, tough conference slate ahead of you. So the goal would be, as I was explaining to fans, as a guy who covers the NFL, the goal is going to now be more of an NFL mindset, where it's cool to win your division. That's a goal. It's cool to win your conference. That's always a goal. The goal is to get to the playoffs, though. If you can get to the playoffs, you can win the Super Bowl. If you get to the playoffs, you can win a national championship. And that's the overall overarching goal, is to be able to put yourself in position to continue consistently be in the college football playoff.